Welcome to meeting number 54 of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room as well as remotely through the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the members and the witnesses as well. Please wait until I recognize you by name before you speak. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please do mute yourselves when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom is at the bottom of your screen, and you do have a choice of either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. In accordance with our routine motion, I am informed by the clerk that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by committee on Monday, June 20th, 2022, the committee resumes its study of the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women globally. And it's a great pleasure to have with us today two witnesses for the first panel. From Equality Fund, we have Ms. Beth Woroniak, who is the Vice President of Policy. We also have joining us Ms. Lysaya Vasilenko, Member of Parliament from Ukraine. So you will each be provided 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which it will be followed by questions from the members. I will put this up when you only have 30 seconds remaining as an indicator to please wrap up your comments. And that applies not only to your opening remarks, but also when members are asking you questions. Please do try to look at me every once in a while so I can let you know how much time you have remaining. So with that note, we are very, very grateful that Ms. Woroniak is here in person. You will start off with 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members. In the mid-1980s, I was living in Nicaragua. Abortion was illegal, and I was often told that it was not an issue, as Nicaraguans loved children. Yet a much-needed public debate erupted when researchers went to the local papers with the news that on average at least 10 women were admitted to hospital every day with health complications from botched abortions. Clear evidence all those years ago that restrictions do not stop abortions from happening, but rather increase unsafe abortions. I'm grateful to the committee for the opportunity to appear today. I represent the Equality Fund, a Canadian-based women's fund that supports women's rights organizations and feminist funds in the Global South and East. At present, Equality Fund resources are flowing to over 300 women's rights and LGBTQI organizations in about 85 countries. In my brief time, I will comment on global trends, provide examples of how activists work on SRHR issues, and end with a short note on Canada's role. I will not repeat the important data witnesses have shared. However, I will highlight that while there have been important gains, primarily in Latin America, overall there are grave concerns regarding attempts to roll back progress. We are seeing well-funded and organized attacks on advocates and coordinated efforts to limit and restrict comprehensive sexuality education and abortion rights. This is often referred to as the anti-gender movement and intimately linked to efforts to restrict LGBTQI rights and roll back advances on women's rights. Women's rights organizations are attempting to hold the line in the face of these attacks. Here are examples drawing on the list of organizations the Equality Fund has the privilege to support. First, women's rights organizations actually deliver SRHR services free or at a reduced cost. The Marza Sexual Health Center in Lebanon provides confidential and anonymous services, including testing for HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. Services are provided in a friendly environment free of stigma and discrimination. A Cameroonian organization provides psychosocial support, vocational training, and temporary housing to girls fleeing early and forced marriage. Second, organizations advocate for the promotion and protection of the sexual and reproductive rights of women and young people. This involves dialogue with both local and national authorities. For example, the Sarajevo Open Center publishes regular reports on the state of human rights of women in Bosnia and Herzegovina that include extensive discussion and evidence on SRHR issues. Third, women's rights organizations work to counter misinformation. In Asia, an organization operates a hotline to ensure people have accurate information and advice. Others are working in innovative ways in digital spaces to get clear and understandable information to those seeking it. Fourth, women's rights activists work at community level, engaging in discussions on social attitudes and practices. Balance in Mexico has produced a graphic novel. In Nepal, Hamro Palo works with schoolgirls in remote areas to reverse persistent taboos around menstruation. This brings me to Canada's role. Canada's unwavering support for sexual and reproductive rights is an integral part of supporting the rights of women, girls, and gender-diverse people. It is important that Canada speak out clearly and consistently in global forums, in bilateral discussions, and as we formulate and implement all elements of our foreign policy. Leadership and joining with allies is essential. In conclusion, our recommendations. First, continue and expand support to women's rights organizations. Despite the essential role these organizations play, they are dramatically underfunded. According to the latest OECD DAC figures, overall development assistance funding to women's rights organizations has actually decreased. Second, release the long-promised feminist foreign policy. SRHR is core to gender justice, a clear document that outlines Canada's coherent, rights-based approach to feminist foreign policy will ensure that our diplomats and aid workers have clear guidelines for their work. Third, ensure that SRHR is a core programming area in Canada's response to crisis. The government is currently developing Canada's third National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security and updating the gender-responsive humanitarian assistance policy. Resources for SRHR, especially the neglected areas, should be key elements in these two plans. Fourth, make clear and consistent progress on SRHR funding commitments, especially funding for the neglected areas, as outlined by previous witnesses, and ensure clear and regular public reporting on spending and impacts. Fifth, and finally, continue to be a strong global advocate on SRHR in particular and the rights of women, girls, and LGBTQI people in general. As United Nations Secretary General Guterres said last year, we are seeing a pushback on women's rights. We must push back on the pushback. In this pushback against the pushback, Canada's leadership and investments are essential. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weroniak. I've been advised by the clerk that we're having some technical problems with our second witness. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll proceed with questioning, and then when the second witness does connect, then we'll have her do her opening remarks. Yes. She's trying to connect. We've been in touch with her, but she is yet to actually connect.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
I think given that the witness is coming from Ukraine, we should indulge a few moments so that she can connect under very difficult circumstances.
Yeah. You want to suspend?
Yes, Mr. Bergeron.
Didn't we do preliminary tests?
Pardon? They did do an initial test, but then subsequently she said that she would be back, but she isn't back, correct? She's trying to connect. But they did do the test initially. Okay, so can we proceed with questions? Yep. Everyone okay with that? Okay.
Chair, we had some specific questions for the witness from
Hopefully
Ukraine.
she will be joining
so
us.
do we want to mix up the order a little bit? Like I'm happy to switch the order of rounds
Sure.
because we would like to ask
First,
her questions.
From your side, I have Ms. Kremp.
No, but what I mean is happy for the government side to take the first round of questions if they have questions for this witness, and because we have specific questions that we have prepared that we want to ask to the
Same
Ukrainian
goes
MP.
for all of us.
I know, but
think.
if people are comfortable altering the order of questions, if they have questions.
No.
Okay.
So, Ms. Kramp
No.
Nyman, you have 6 minutes.
If I may, I believe that we're seeking to suspend for a little while just to give her some time to see if she can join.
We've got a very tight schedule today already. We only have 45 minutes for this panel to be followed by another panel. So I think we should make the most of the time that we have, and also out of respect for the witness who has appeared. Yes.
Could I suggest that we do a rapid round with this witness, and then do a rapid round with the second witness, and try that?
What we were thinking of doing is we're going to start questions. As soon as the Ukrainian witness is available, then we will go to her, and whatever time remains, it will.
I'm just suggesting 3, 3, 3, 3. Each of the four parties,
Sure.
3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chong's not here, so he won't argue with me about them getting too much time.
Okay, 3 minutes
Three,
each.
three, three.
Ms.
And
Kramp
then
Nyman.
if we need to suspend, we'll suspend.
Ms. Kramp Nyman, 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'll be passing my time to Garnet Genius. Thank you.
To Mr. Jennings. Mr. Jennings, 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, the witness, for being here. I wanted to just start with the Muskoka initiative. This was the maternal and child health initiative that was put forward by the previous Conservative government. I think it was, I guess my own view is that it was very successful. We had significant buy-in from countries around the world on supporting basic health support for women and girls, and it was done in a consensual basis, and it was tied to real tracking of results and measurements of accountability. And I think this has been widely praised and recognized as a model. I wonder just if you could share some reflections on the Muskoka initiative, its impact, and what we can learn from that initiative.
Thank you for that question. The Muskoka initiative indeed was an important step forward. I think there was significant mobilization of global resources to address maternal health. One of the challenges moving forward was that it was rather narrow in its approach in terms of bringing a comprehensive approach to sexual reproductive health and rights, in terms of addressing the full range of issues. We know that women's maternal health indicators are not just addressed by the provision of health clinics and health services, but we see real progress when there is movement on a broad range of SR-HR issues.
I mean, from what I understand and recall, the initiative was extremely broad. It didn't contain maybe the narrow focus on certain issues that some parties were pushing for, but it covered maternal and child health. It covered nutrition. It covered access to vaccinations. It covered access to vitamins, other forms of food. From my perspective, it was maybe it didn't do everything. No development initiative does everything, but it really put the spotlight, in particular, on the health of women and girls. And we've seen some different language around some of those issues from the government in terms of the branding, but there has been, it was something that was started by a Conservative government, emphasizing the importance of health of women and girls as part of international development, and I see it as being broad. Could you maybe just clarify your comments in terms of you described it as narrow. I don't think that's quite fair. What do you precisely mean by that?
You have 20 seconds, really. Thank you.
Partly in order for women to make choices about the number of pregnancies and the timing of pregnancies and how they are access health services, you also have to look at broad initiatives around gender equality and the rights of women and girls within society.
I just think it included that, though, right?
Those.
I mean, it included, like our international development included a very broad range of initiatives around women's participation, women's empowerment, as well as access to health. So, I know that there's sort of
Mr. Jennings, you're
okay,
out of time.
Thanks.
So next we go to Dr. Fry. Dr. Fry, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just correct the record here that actually the Muskoka initiative fell very, very short of the comprehensive things that we're talking about. It did not originally have contraception involved in it, and it absolutely banned access to safe abortion. So just let's get that clear on the record. Now, I just wanted to ask the witness a very important question. I am just blown away by your data that 5 women every day suffer from the morbidity and mortality effects of unsafe abortion, because that's what we're talking about. I am blown away by that. Can you tell me what it's like in the rest of Latin America? What's the access like in the rest of Latin America?
Thank you for that question. The access to safe abortion varies across Latin America. Initially, Latin America was one of the most conservative regions in the world, but what we've seen recently are changes in legislation, primarily as a result of activism on the part of very, very brave feminists who have mobilized and carried out discussions with parliamentarians and with their communities. And we're gradually seeing more and more countries that are opening up and seriously addressing access to safe abortion, post-abortion care.
Thank you very much. I think that one of the things that I'd like you to comment on is the concept of sexual and reproductive health and rights is a spectrum of services, not one service. And what is the status of education in Latin America for adolescent youth so that they can make choices about contraception, their need to be sexually active or not? Then, what is the status of contraception available? And if an abortion is desired, is the oral is oral medication available to help with abortion, or do they have to actually go to a hospital and to a safe place to have it done?
Thank you for the question. I think there are very much differences across different countries. The organizations that we support often work with young girls, work with marginalized communities to try to have discussions and improve education and access. I think if you're looking for specific statistics on specific countries in terms of contraception availability, that's something that that UNFPA is better able to provide, but we can help the committee access that data if it's of interest.
It would be very important for us to have access to that data. I think it's really important. It's at the core. If you're not going to be
Dr. FAAE, I'm afraid you're out of
abortion,
time. Terribly sorry about that. We next go to Madame Larouche. Vous avez 3.
You have 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Voronyuk, for your testimony today. What really struck me in what you said is that you talked about liberating feminist policy. So I'd like to hear you say a bit more about that, in the knowledge that Canada in 2007 said it had a feminist agenda. And so how do you see this international feminist policy? And in your opinion, does Canada really respect that definition?
Absolutely. In 2017, the Government of Canada adopted the Feminist International Assistance Policy, which many people applauded, and we certainly were among those applauding, that set out new guidance on how Canada's development assistance would be directed. We were also have been told that Canada has a feminist approach to its entire foreign policy, but we have no written document. We have no policy guidance that sets out what the entire feminist approach to foreign policy is. There have been several drafts of this developed, but we're still waiting on its release. And it's a very important document because it would set out feminist policy guidance not just for international development, but for trade, for immigration, for diplomacy, for cultural, for how the consulate affairs work. And without that document, diplomats, aid workers are often not aware of what it is their responsibilities are. And we're also not clear globally. We've seen Germany most recently adopt a feminist foreign policy with a clear guidance that outlines principles. And there's no corresponding document from Canada. So even around the world, there are many questions. What does Canada's feminist foreign policy involve?
Okay, so we can see that we need to really clearly define what that feminist policy is. And if not, perhaps I'd talk about the subsidies. What could be done? How could we proceed to ensure that these programs are there, the relevant ones in terms of sexual and reproductive health and rights? So in terms of funding, what could be done? You spoke about this in your recommendations. You talked about freeing this feminist policy, but also investing more in these things.
That I think what we've seen with the recent accountability report on health and SRHR spending is a good step forward, that we now have codes within global affairs to track spending. So I think public accountability on what is being invested and where is important. I think it's also very important that the targets that have been set by the government are met, that we need to see what kind of initiatives are in the pipeline, what's being considered at Global Affairs, what are some of the discussions. And throughout all of that, it's really important to have a good discussion with civil society organizations on what kinds of recommendations are there for the way forward.
We next go to Madam McPherson. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Ms. Warniak, for being here. Obviously, I look at you and think of you as one of the preeminent specialists on SRHR in this country, and so thank you for your work. I think you have literally saved women's lives by the work that you've done. I'd like to also talk a little bit about the feminist foreign policy that has not been provided. And I guess one of the things I want to talk about is, as we see increased conflict around the world, you spoke about how the feminist foreign policy would advise with regards to diplomacy, with regards to trade, with regards to those relationships. I'd like you to talk a little bit about how a feminist foreign policy would inform our decisions on peace and conflict, security building, looking at Ukraine, looking at what we're seeing with women in Ukraine at the moment. How would that help?
Thank you for the question. In the year 2000, the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution on women, peace, and security, and this was absolutely path-breaking because it acknowledged for the first time the interrelationship of the security of states with women's security. We actually have research now that shows that one of the main predictors of whether a country will go to war with its neighbors is the status of women inside that country. So I think what a feminist foreign policy offers us is this opportunity to rethink what security means, and it gives us a chance to bring some of the insights of alternative approaches to peace and security into how we tackle some of the really pressing issues of our time. Mm-hmm. So I think actually sometimes people say, a feminist foreign policy, it sounds very abstract or esoteric. I think it's really practical. I think it offers us guidance of how we can move forward on building more peaceful, more sustainable and prosperous societies.
Thank you. And one of the things that you had talked about is that we need we've heard this many times that we need increased, sustainable, predictable funding, not sort of these ups and downs, very not transparent. Would it be beneficial to have SRHR funding be legislated into law to be a set priority of this government legally? Would that help?
I think that legislation is absolutely important in terms of setting targets and making and meeting targets. I think it also needs to be accompanied by broader understanding within Global Affairs Canada on what this programming is and why it's important. I think there's also public accountability, that we have clear reporting on the actual spending. So I think just like we've seen with other legislative requirements, that they are absolutely essential, but they are not enough by themselves to move the needle forward.
Thank you very much, and I believe I'm out of time.
5 seconds short, but thank you
Yeah,
for that.
I'm out of time.
Very grateful. So, members, I regret to inform everyone. Whoops, there might be a new development.
She's connecting.
She's connecting. Okay, I hear she is connecting, so she should hopefully be with us momentarily. There we go.
Hello, hi.
Hello, Ms. Vasilenko. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I understand you were experiencing some problems, so our apologies for that. We have heard from the first witness, so now we turn to you. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will go to members for question. So the floor is yours. Please do proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Asasi. Thank you, dear members of the committee, for hosting me. I'm very happy to finally be able to serve as a witness to your committee, although on a topic that I would much rather not have to talk about. But as many Ukrainians, we are now bound by a duty to speak the truth, the solemn truth of what is actually going on in our country. And when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and the rights of women, which is the topic of this panel, of this session you are hosting, unfortunately, there are many very sad, very disturbing developments that we must report from Ukraine over the past year, when Russia's aggression against Ukraine has escalated to absolutely unthinkable measures, where everything that could be used as a weapon was used as a weapon against the Ukrainian people, including sexual violence. Ukraine, unfortunately, has not been an exception from the rule, but rather a very sad continuation of a systemic use of various sexual crimes, rape included, various kinds of tortures, various kinds of assaults, harassments, that essentially amount to using sexual violence as a weapon of war. And Russian soldiers and Russian military have not been an exception in this kind. We have had reports as early on as March last year, when the areas surrounding Kiev, the Kiev region, were under occupation by the Russian soldiers, that commands were given out to military units to spare no civilians, and to intimidate the civilian population in all ways possible. This is why rape was endorsed. This is why you have had accounts in the news and probably in session like this, and when you were talking to the Ukrainian population about absolutely horrific stories where women, young girls, were kept captive as hostages, sometimes in the basements of their own homes, when they were subject to hearing conversations from the soldiers who were holding them hostage, that they would be rape victims and that they would need to choose among themselves who would be raped this night. These stories, these horrific stories, they can be retold en masse at the moment, because there are 171 open investigations of rape and sexual violence against Ukrainian women committed by Russian soldiers in Ukraine. This number keeps growing. Just several months ago, if I were to be reporting at a similar session, I would name the number of 154 cases, but more women and more girls are coming forward. In Ukraine, we step away from calling them victims. We call them survivors. We call them survivors, and the government of Ukraine today has many programs endorsed and headed by the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, to help these survivors. Almost every region, with the help of international donors, through the programs of UN Women, through the programs of the special UN representatives on sexual violence at times of conflict, has set up a whole network of survivor assistance centers across the whole of Ukraine, where women, girls, and males as well, can come forward to seek support and assistance. These survivor centers record many, many more cases than the 171 open investigations with the prosecutor general. The reason being is that the culture in Ukraine is still such that essentially being a survivor of sexual violence, being a survivor of rape is still very much stigmatized in society. It's not necessarily something that you want to come forward with. It's not necessarily something that you would want to have a mark on the rest of your own life, but also most importantly on the life of your children and on the life of your families. So there is much work that is being done today by NGOs. There is much work that is being done today by the women who have survived tortures and sexual violence back in 2014, 2015, when Russia's aggression against Ukraine first started. And they themselves have gone through a painful process of recovery, but they themselves can today provide a form of peer support to the survivors of these crimes that were committed and that are being committed through this last 12 months and this ongoing Russian aggression. The worst situations are, of course, witnessed in the territories that are under effective Russian control, under Russian occupation. So I myself, I'm from Kiev. So when on the 1st of April, the Kiev region, the northern parts of the Kiev region were deoccupied, were liberated from the Russians, and it was possible to go in there and to speak to the population there. Of course, many stories came uncovered. But the problem is, as I have emphasized, is one thing that people can come to you and can share their stories or can share hearsay evidence, for example, from what they heard their neighbors speak or what they heard that families may have encountered or suffered on in the next regions or in the next streets. And it's another thing to have these people come and give evidence, for this evidence to be properly documented by prosecutors and be put in the format of a legal case, which could bring open investigations and which could bring justice to the perpetrators. I think that in Ukraine, the biggest challenge today is building this bridge.
You're considerably over the allotted time. Can we open it up to questions, and perhaps the other issues you wanted to cover will emerge as the members ask you questions?
Of course.
Is that okay?
Of course. I agree. Agree completely, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Vasilenko. So we now go to questions from the members. We first go to MP Wagenthal. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I appreciate so much, Ms. Vasilenko, for your testimony this morning. I had the privilege of being in Ukraine in 2017 in Kyiv and visiting the hospital there with those who had come back wounded, and 20 of our emergency doctors were there working with them. And it means a lot to me also that Canada is doing its part in Ukraine, as I too have that background in my family. I understand then that basically since 2014, we're talking about 9 years of Ukraine dealing specifically around the war with Russia and rape being used as a weapon of war. In the House of Commons, it was brought to our attention in the House from a member that also in Ukraine, women who are expecting a child and carrying it to term are also targets of this war amongst the Russian people that are attacking them because of, I guess, the level of fear that would put into people as well. Do you feel that there are things that we should be doing to assist you? I know you are an advocate for health care and you're a member of the Health Committee. How could Canada do more to assist in those circumstances?
May I answer?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. So I'm actually a member of the Environmental Committee, and I deal a lot with sustainable development. And of course, in part, in this context, women's and girls' rights they make up a large part of my work. But essentially, over the last year, I think that we all Ukrainian parliamentarians have started doing whatever they can, as all Ukrainian people have started doing whatever they can to keep the nation alive. And I think that the point that you bring forward is very important because, yes, women carrying a child are a target. There have been bombings of the maternity wards. For me personally, this was a moment that has shaken me up the most over the last year, especially on the onset of this escalation of the invasion, when the Mariupol maternity ward was bombed, for example. Then there were other cases in Zhytomyr, which is a city just west of Kiev, just some 200 kilometers from Kiev, where a maternity ward was bombed again. And we had many cases of maternity wards being bombed, being targeted by Russian missiles throughout this year, which brings to the conclusion that actually the tactic that Russia is espousing against Ukraine and against Ukrainians is one of a genocidal nature. And we are very much aware and grateful to Canada, to your parliament for passing the relevant acts and resolutions recognizing that Russia is essentially committing a genocide against the Ukrainian people. And we would urge your assistance with spreading this idea and the understanding of what Russia's tactics and strategies are across other parliaments across the globe. I think this is much, much needed, especially in our international duty.
Mr. Chair,
under the
Mr. Chair, point of order. I'm having trouble hearing the witness, and if the Mr. Bergeron needs to suspend the meeting, it would be helpful, but we couldn't hear the witness, so I'd like that time to be extended because I was trying with one ear closed to listen, but I wasn't able to hear. So either we need to suspend the meeting to solve the problem or at least extend some time to the witness.
So sorry about that. We will give you an additional 25 seconds just to make up for that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Bergeron.
Je pense qu'il y a un problème de...
I think there's a difficulty of understanding here, and I'd like this to be clarified. We had a problem of connecting with the second witness, and in order to solve that with the second witness, we decided collectively to have a first round of 3 minutes with the first witness. So the understanding that we had of that was that that was the first round divided in two. So 6 minutes divided in two. So that would be 3 minutes for the first witness, 3 minutes for the second witness. And then we'd have a second round of questions. And now you've decided that this second round of questions with our second witness was the second round of questions. So I don't see why our second witness should have less time to speak in terms of answering questions than the first witness had. So I respectfully submit that this is still the first round that we split into 3 minutes for the first witness, 3 minutes for the second witness. That was my understanding of things, and clearly it's not yours. So I would like to see what my colleagues think of this. I hope that my understanding was the correct one and that we are still talking about the first round of questions, which was divided in two.
Point of order? Yes. I would suggest that we did that 3-3-3-3 with the first witness. We would do the 3-3-3-3 with the second witness. Then we go to the second round as we would normally and have both witnesses. I think that was my understanding.
It was mine too.
So,
sure, let's do that.
Yeah, everyone's okay with that?
That was my understanding as well. Just hopefully we can have a little bit more than 20 seconds because we lost a good chunk of our 3 minutes because of the interruptions. No, a minute and a half, maybe.
Minute and a half.
You guys were talking loudly.
It wasn't me. It was Mr. Bergeron.
Well, okay, a minute. How about a minute?
It's all in the record. The record still contains the entirety of the testimony.
I mean, this is. Yes.
On that, then, further on the point of order, my fear is we're going to get a squeeze today.
Absolutely,
which is
for the
okay.
second panel.
I just think we need to then understand that today's meeting will be on the witnesses primarily. If we get some time to go in camera for instructions, we will. But we may not finish instructions today, or we may not get to them, because I think we have witnesses here that we should honor and do our questioning. And we may need to postpone the instructions, the drafting instructions, which I know becomes problematic.
We're going to try to avoid that, Mr. Oliphant. Obviously, it has a cascading effect,
Yes.
adding all this time, and we're considerably behind already because of technical problems and then the way we reconfigured this. So we'll give you 45 seconds, Mr. Janis.
You just, Mr. Chair, check for a consensus that we will finish the first hour, and then we go to the second hour, and we try to honor the witnesses, and then write
Yes,
instructions
as
if we have
things are
time.
currently proceeding, I think we're going to be about 20 minutes behind schedule. But
Pass my time to Shelby.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. So thank you, Madam Vasilenko, for your testimony. Aside from this committee, I also sit on national defense, and as you can certainly imagine, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine has caused great concern, and there's obviously a dovetail between national defense, foreign affairs, and that of the health and well-being of women in the conflict area. This has been exacerbated by the ICC's recent arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin and Ms. Lyubova. Could you possibly share your thoughts on this? In addition, what Canada can do to help women and children, in your words, the survivors in Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, again, thank you to Canada for supporting the work of the ICC and of the prosecutor's office there with the generous contributions to work exactly on the crimes of sexual violence committed by Russian soldiers in Ukraine. Having said that, turning to your question about the arrest warrants for Putin and Ms. Lyubova, I think it's a historic, groundbreaking decision, one long awaited. It's a shame that it took so many violations of international law, war crimes, and crimes against humanity to be committed before such arrest warrants were issued. But now I think our concern needs to be how these warrants will be executed and whether they will be executed. 123 countries signatories to the statute should abide with the rules and execute these arrest warrants should Putin or Lyubova step foot on the territories of these countries. But at the same time, we have many examples from past arrest warrants being issued against political leaders where they were not executed. So I think it's a matter of principle for the whole of the international community, all of the signatories of the ICC to be on the same page and on the same understanding that there must be not just the formal issuance of an arrest warrant, but there must be an execution, and it's the next step towards which we must work because the criminals must bear full responsibility for their crimes.
thank you. We next go to Ms. Bendayan. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Vasilenko, for your testimony here today, and of course for the incredible, strength and resilience that you and your people are showing. I too had a question about the ICC, but thank you for recognizing Canada's leadership and delving already into that issue. Perhaps I would go then to ask you to elaborate a little bit more about the use of rape, torture, assaults, as you describe them. Sexual violence being used as a weapon of war by Russia. In particular, can you elaborate a little on the information that you provided earlier on orders, as you put it, commands being given to Russian soldiers to intimidate civilians through rape and sexual assault?
Thank you. It's actually one of the most difficult topics that I have to comment on when speaking about what is going on the ground in Ukraine. So just to give you the understanding and the idea around the victims. So they are aged anywhere from 4 years old to 80 years old. So there is no discrimination between young, old, between social status. It's basically the idea of the rape in the case of the Russian army against the Ukrainian people. It's not to gain sexual pleasures, but it's to intimidate the population, to inflict fear on the population, to demoralize the civilian population in their resilience and in their resistance. I think the main thing that the Russian army saw when they came to Ukraine is that Kyiv would not fall within 3 hours or 3 days, and that actually the population is standing strong behind the army, behind the Ukrainian military. So this is where the idea comes from, that there needs to be a demoralizing factor towards the people. If you look also here, the numbers you have to look at is also the prisoners of war. The prisoners of war are not just the military; they are also the civilians. They are also the civilians, and among these civilians, the majority of them are actually women, because it's the women who are continuing to serve their communities as social workers, as doctors, as street cleaners, and it's these women who fall prey to the Russian soldiers, again, because you need to take them out of the equation so that society falls and does not function properly. So this is the general idea. And as for just a final point, if I may, on the orders, as you have asked. So what we know from hearsay from the local people in the Kiev region is that when the first elite units were coming down on the 24th of February in Hostomel, in Bucha, in Irpin, and they realized that they would not be able to take Kiev, they were pulled out from the area. But they told the civilian population that if you have the chance, leave now, because the next units who are going to be coming in, they're not elite units. And they have clear orders to do whatever they want with the looting, with the torture, with the killing, with the rape. So this was a warning given by some of the elite units of Russia to the people of Ukraine to leave their homes, because the next ones would be coming in just to destroy and to exterminate everything living in these areas.
Very quick.
Out of time. So we next go to Mr. Bergeron, 3 minutes. LaRouche.
Merci. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Vasilenko, I was at the Interparliamentary Union meeting last week, and your delegation, your Ukrainian delegation, worked to have the emergency debate to put forward a motion on the situation of women in different conflict zones, particularly in Ukraine. Could you elaborate on that motion, please, at that emergency debate? And what are you expecting from parliamentarians, particularly here in Canada, following the adoption of that debate at the Interparliamentary Union last week?
Madame Larouche.
Thank you, Madame Larouche. It was a great pleasure to see you again last week, and I thank you very much for the efforts that you're continuing to make and that we're seeing Canada's delegation continue, particularly the support for these emergency motions, as you mentioned. So the emergency motion that was adopted was on military actions around the world, including the humanitarian crisis that has been the result of Russian aggression in the Ukraine that has imposed such suffering on women and children. So I think today that the main problem that has to be solved as quickly as possible is the deportation, the illegal deportation of children from Ukraine to Russian territory, rather. And there's also a component of genocide that Russia is committing against Ukraine here. So I see here that we have to have a united international effort to put an end to these atrocious crimes and atrocities, and that we should also do whatever we can to keep or get our children back to Ukraine as quickly as possible. So how to do this? This is a debate that we should really have with a great deal more time and on a theme that deserves really a more in-depth and broad discussion. This problem doesn't have an immediate solution. The Russians don't want to have representatives of other countries, not even from the major humanitarian institutions on their territory. So we don't know what the conditions are for these Ukrainian children. What we do know is that there are programs within the Russian government that have been supported by Ms. Lvova-Belova to have these Ukrainian children adopted as quickly as possible, to place them with Russian families in order to eradicate their Ukrainian roots, their language, their culture, and their traditions, so that they can be wiped out from these children, everything that is Ukrainian within them. So this is a tactic that has been used in the past, particularly with the Nazi regime during the Second World War, and we're seeing that being repeated today in the 21st century in Europe, in the midst of our civilized world. It's absolutely not normal, and I think that we have to combine greater efforts in world parliaments, but also amongst international communities with humanitarian organizations internationally to see what we can effectively do in order to put an end to these crimes. You're not talking just about orphans.
We now go to Ms. McPherson for the last 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for your testimony. This is of course very hard to hear, and I have to just say I think Ukrainian women are heroes, and not just for what they are doing, but how they are leading in their country. So thank you for being one of those heroes. What I'm interested in knowing about is how we help Ukraine long term as well. So we've talked about some of the things that need to be done in the short term. We've talked about how we need to support women. I was in Irpin just 2 weeks ago, and I saw exactly how the Russian army had targeted the civilian infrastructure, had clearly just targeted civilians. How can Canada help Ukraine? How can Canada help Ukrainian women in the long term to recover from this, to thrive going forward?
Thank you, Ms. McPherson, for the question. And I think what we saw in Irpin is just the tip of the iceberg of what is yet to be seen after Mariupol is liberated, Melitopol is liberated, Donetsk, Luhansk, which have been under occupation for 9 years, going on 10, will be liberated. There is a lot of work to be done to rebuild, reconstruct, recover. And I think that what Canada can do is continue being the leader in finding recovery mechanisms for Ukraine. Today, I personally use the example of Canada when I prompt other governments to pass legislation on the ability to use Russia's confiscated assets for recovery projects of Ukraine. I urge Canadian parliamentarians and governments alike to speak to countries, especially US, UK, Switzerland, where the most of Russian assets are located at the moment, because that money is the real money which can be used already to help rebuild and recover Ukraine. And how do we rebuild and recover? Women play the principal role here, because the small and medium businesses which keep communities going, which give jobs to the simple people on the ground, they are largely in Ukraine run by women. The other point which I would like to reiterate is you have to understand that this escalation over the last year has caused a massive migration of people. We have 8 million internally displaced and 7 million externally displaced Ukrainians. The majority of them, again, are women and children, especially those Ukrainians who go abroad. So helping them reconnect with Ukraine, giving them opportunities to come back to Ukraine, to restart their businesses, to get into employment lines, that I think will do wonders for the recovery of Ukraine's economy and also for the demographic recovery of Ukraine's society.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this point, allow me to thank Ms. Woroniak and Ms. Vasilenko. In particular, Ms. Vasilenko, terribly sorry for the technical problems. But let me say that I know I speak on behalf of all members when I say you are a hero. The women of Ukraine are truly inspirational, as Ms. McPherson said. So thank you very much for having provided this testimony. And as you indicated, it is difficult testimony. So we are immeasurably grateful for your contribution to this. Thank you. And on that
Thank
point,
you,
we
Mr.
will.
Sassi.
Thank you. And we will suspend for a few minutes just to allow us to get the other witnesses connected. Thank you. So welcome back, everyone. We will now proceed to give pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, June 20th, 2022, the committee resumes its study of sexual and reproductive health and rights of women globally. As the clerks and the IT ambassador have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting and have informed the witnesses appearing by video conference of technical aspects of hybrid meeting, it is now my great pleasure to welcome our witnesses. First, we have Dr. Asugwa, who is joining us virtually as an individual. Then from the Canadian Partnership for Women in Children's Health, we have Ms. Julia Anderson, who is the Chief Executive Officer. And third, from Planned Parenthood Toronto, we have Ms. Mohini Datta-Ray, the Executive Director. So initially, each of you will be provided 5 minutes of opening remarks, after which we will proceed with questions from the members. So Dr. Asugwa, you will have the first 5 minutes, and once you only have about 20 seconds remaining, I will put this up as a sign. Would be grateful if you did wrap it up in the allotted time. Dr. Asugwa, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor and a privilege for me to address you on sexual and reproductive health of women globally. And speaking about sexual and reproductive health, I'd like to define World Health Organization definition of health, which is defined as referring to a state of complete physical, mental, and social health, and not merely the absence of diseases and infirmity. And when this applies to the reproductive system, it includes its processes and functions. And I'd like to say that the provision of abortion does not augur well for the physical, mental, and social health of women. Why would I say that? A study in 2003 by the United Nations indicates that in 71% of sub-Saharan people live in poverty. Women are the most hit. There's a multidimensional approach to the poverty experienced by women, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, that affects their health, their education, their life expectancy. And I would like to paint a brief profile of such a woman. My protagonist is called Jane. She's 23 years old, lives in Lagos, Nigeria, married with 2 children, and is expecting her 3rd child. She and her husband are looking forward to having that child. They live in a room with other 30 other overcrowded areas in Lagos. They have no indoor plumbing. They have no kitchen. They share common resources like toilets and bathroom. Open defecation is rife. Flies, mosquitoes abound. Jane is a food seller. She and her husband earn less than $30 per month. And Jane also, because of the security situation in Nigeria, would need to pay a levy to the local thugs in her area for protection. And these local thugs can turn aggressors, given the right amount of money. So objectively, what are the health needs of Jane? She needs antenatal care, she needs nutrition, she needs adequate care during pregnancy and childbirth. And what she will probably be able to afford will be a native birth attendant who is not equipped to take care of complications during pregnancy or during childbirth. But objectively, what does Jane need? She needs shelter, she needs nutrition, she needs potable water, she needs accessible and affordable health care. She needs education, she needs economic empowerment. But who speaks for the Janes of this world? Who listen to those poor women who actually need and want to have children, but are living in abject poverty? On one hand, Jane is battered by this situation of her country. And on the other hand, she's battered by foreign donors that present as her only option abortion. A former minister of education, foreign minister of Nigeria says that the foreign funding for non-profit organizations is a tool for subversion of the global south by the global north. And I do believe that applies when sexual and reproductive health is offered and abortion as the primary line of offering help to these poor women. Now, in Africa, we love children. African couples love children. Pregnancy is seen as a blessing. Abortion for us is a taboo. So when Jane is being offered and forced to take abortion as a solution, nobody takes into account her cultural belief, nor her religious belief. And Jane is not given the opportunity to speak for herself and to look for support that will fall in line with her beliefs. Mr. Chair, I would like to say that I applaud the government of Canada for this study, and that last year, the Canadian government gave a huge donation towards HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis and malaria support, and that is a step in the right direction. I think I'll conclude with that the Janes of this world will be happier if they are supported, if they are empowered to seek for solutions that are in line with their religious and cultural belief, and not forced without any solution to fall into whatever the funders think what they need. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much for that. Since Ms. Data Ray is virtual as well, we might as well proceed with Ms. Data Ray. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm honored to be invited here today. I represent, as you've heard, Planned Parenthood Toronto, a community health centre that since the 1960s advances reproductive justice and sexual and reproductive health for young people through primary and mental health care, community programs, research, and advocacy. Why should what we are seeing on the ground at PPT matter to this committee? Because the disturbing trends that we are experiencing, particularly along the fault lines of gender, bodily autonomy, and safety for women, girls, and trans people, is tied, sometimes quite directly, to Canada's presence and field of influence abroad. Along with climate disaster, which also impacts women and girls and trans people disproportionately, it is also no exaggeration that the terrifying global backsliding around gender is the most urgent issue of this generation, as it is a tool to mainstream authoritarianism across the world. Canada, of course, is not immune to such global trends. They are global. At last count, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada identified well-funded anti-abortion activists are in every level of our own governments, including over 80 at the federal level, showing that here in Canada, anti-choice organizing is taking its lessons well. There is so much that could be said and so many linkages to be made, but I want to take this opportunity to focus on 2 illustrative areas: the profound impact of predatory Canadian so-called colleges on young women and girls in rural India, and the ongoing violence against women and girls as a result of Canadian resource extraction projects. Reproductive justice, defined by Black and Indigenous feminists through Sister Song Women of Color Collective, is the right to have children, to not have children, and raise those children in safe and sustainable communities. Crucially, it pushes the somewhat narrow reproductive rights argument further to a social justice approach. Every woman, girl, and trans person should have the right to have children, not have children, and raise those children in safe and sustainable communities. As climate disaster and a hard right governments grow in power globally, we see the dire impacts locally. Every year, PPT has funded provincially $74,000 to support non-insured clients access abortion mostly, most of whom have precarious status or are students with inadequate health insurance. Increasingly, Who we see is students from predatory colleges who are actively and intentionally luring foreign students to Canada and then abandoning them once they get here. No actual education materializes, and there's no way to get home. Their family's entire savings and often exorbitant loans spent to somehow get here. Our non-insured budget for abortion care has ballooned from $74,000 to $500,000 in 1 year. Those coming to us are part of a new phenomenon. Rural farming communities in India sending not their sons, but their daughters for education, hoping for a better life in the context of escalating climate change, globalization, and deep indebtedness with no relief from a hostile Indian government. Many of these young women find themselves highly exploited, sexually assaulted by landlords, trafficked locally, or in coercive relationships with no resources. As providers and advocates, we're scrambling to respond. I have watched the important witness statements at this committee, petitioning Canada to stay accountable and fulfill its crucial, stable, feminist gender funding commitments globally. I want to underscore this. Now, more than ever, this is a matter of life and death. It is crucial that Canada work with local feminist organizers, both on the ground, as it were, and also online, where well-funded misogynist and authoritarian organizing is increasingly happening. And I want, with great urgency, to add a layer, born of personal experience. My late father was a Canadian mining and resource extraction executive. Specifically, he had a key role in negotiating contracts between Canadian mining companies and countries like India, Mexico, China, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Madagascar. And often our whole family would go along with him, giving me an exciting childhood of traveling around the world, riding giant coal dump trucks, hearing casual conversations over imported pizza pockets about how entire villages were being displaced forever in order to allow for the Canadian-led mining operations. I've been propositioned aggressively as young as 12 years old by grown Canadian men who were perhaps used to displaced and trafficked local children to whom I bore a close resemblance. We fled the onset of civil war and back into the safety of Canada, leaving friends, classmates, and neighbors behind to face the horror. Canada is both a great hope globally and frustratingly one of the biggest perpetrators of extractive practices that contribute to both climate disaster, but also result in profound loss of human rights and land and result in sharp increase in abuse, sexual violence, trafficking, degradation, and state terror of women, girls, and trans people. In addition to our feminist and strategic SRHR funding commitments, there must also be an honest reckoning with Canada's economic practices around the world, a reckoning that has both the will and the teeth. As the executive director of Planned Parenthood Toronto, someone who grew up in and around Canadian mining projects, an immigrant and a feminist, I urge that this reckoning come as humanly possible, as soon as humanly possible. Women, girls, trans people, all of our very survival depends on it, and our planet's survival depends on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now go to Ms. Anderson from the Canadian Partnership for Women and Children's Health. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me today and for the topic of this critical and important study. I represent a partnership of over 100 organizations, private sector entities, research institutions, and civil society organizations who are based in Canada but work here and around the world to promote women and children's health and rights. And I think I carry many stories with me of the importance of this particular issue. My personal story of having become a mother a few years shy of my 20th birthday, the story of my daughters, the story of my nieces, and the story of the many women that I've met while traveling across this country and across the globe. And one consistent theme comes out, which I think has been touched on by both of our speakers, and that is choice. Choice about with whom, how many, when, and if to have children. This is not a choice only about today. It is an intergenerational choice about the future of yourself, your ability to attain education, to attain livelihood, employment, economic security for yourself and your family. And it's a choice about how you want to build your community. And these are choices that women are making across all areas of this globe. And a choice that is absolutely critical and in fact touches on every aspect of international development. In 2019, over 218 million women and girls of reproductive age were unable to properly access SRHR in low and middle income countries. And that situation has only grown and worsened since the pandemic. Not only has progress been reversed in some places, it has slipped behind. Adolescent advocates, women and girls in the communities that we're talking about, are telling us one thing. They're reinforcing the idea that their needs are being deprioritized in the context of the pandemic, sidelined as non-essential. For any woman of reproductive age who is sexually active, the idea that accessing contraceptive is a sidelined issue is a joke, and it is a problem. What does this mean? Our projections tell us that a 12% average decline in access to modern contraceptive would result in an additional 734,000 unintended pregnancies. A 25% average decline in essential pregnancy-related care results in an additional 134,000 obstetric complications and an additional 3,400 maternal deaths. Already in the space of these testimonies, one woman has died every 2 minutes globally as a result of childbirth or pregnancy. And let me underscore that these are perfectly preventable deaths. They are happening in places that don't have money and not happening in places where there is access to health care. There is no innovation needed here, simply a scale up of doing more of what we know we need to do. A 23% shift in abortions from safe to unsafe will lead to an additional 491,000 unsafe abortions. There are real people behind these numbers. Investment coupled with cohesive policy that ensures SRHR is not a siloed or sidelined issue is critical. We need to invest in intentional, innovative actions that are multi-sectoral and integrate social determinants of health, central to achieving equitable access to health services for women, adolescent girls, and children, and for their futures. What this means for Canada is that we cannot mask, divert, or subvert the funds that we have clearly allocated for SRHR. We must meet our commitments for consistent, stable, and predictable increases to this funding, which means successfully scaling up to the investment of $700 million in SRHR directly by the end of this year. But investment alone is not enough. The erosion of rights of women and girls, of children and communities, means that we have to have a multifaceted approach to ensure that rights are not further sidelined. We've got to get organized in our diplomacy, in our foreign policy, and line up with a cohesive strategy around SRHR. We have 3 recommendations coming from the Canadian Partnership for Women and Children's Health in this regard. The first is that Canada scale up its spending as it has committed to doing. This means counting what we are spending, tracking what we are spending, and it means that you as parliamentarians are holding Global Affairs Canada and us as actors in civil society accountable. The second recommendation is that Canada embrace its act as a leader globally in SRHR, much like it did in the Muskoka initiative, to really push other donors to prioritize women and children's health as key, not a sidelined issue, and not an issue to be disregarded when conflict and crisis emerges. And the final is that Canada continue to take a comprehensive health agenda that prioritizes the health rights of women and children and seeks to regain the progress lost over the pandemic. This must and should be a priority for our government now and into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So we now go to the members. For the first round, everyone will be provided 4 minutes. Mr. Jennis, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to pick up on Ms. Anderson's comments about the Muskoka initiative and the success that was achieved there. Start with maybe Dr. Asogwa. The previous Canadian government launched the Muskoka initiative, which was to mobilize countries around the world in support for maternal and child health and nutrition. It did not include funding for abortion. It instead focused on providing help for access to vitamins, vaccines, those sorts of things. And I wonder if you had have some awareness of the Muskoka initiative or thoughts on it itself or on the sort of scope that it covered. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, is that for me?
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I'm not aware of the Muskoka initiative. What I do know is that we have a lot of foreign donors working in Nigeria And there's a big push for making abortion legal in the country, with the detriment of maternal and infant death rate on the increase. Approximately 60 million Nigerian children are out of school, and about 10 million Nigerian children die as infants due to malnutrition. And I'm not aware of that initiative. Thank you.
Okay, but aside from the named initiative, then you're essentially saying there are specific problems around infant mortality, malnutrition, and that those are the areas of focus. Maybe if you could share a bit more, and I guess we can identify ourselves the areas of alignment or non-alignment between programs here. What are those areas of focus for Canadian funding around maternal and child health that we should be really drilling down on?
I think one of the key areas we'll really be interested in is nutrition. If 60% of childhood diseases and death are attributed to malnutrition, that should be something of concern to us. And as I said, about 66% of our population live in multidimensional poverty. And that means that women are mostly affected.
Il n'y a pas de traduction, Monsieur le Président. Les interprètes disent que la connexion n'est pas de bonne qualité.
Their education. It affects
Sorry, Dr.
their housing.
Asogwa, if you could just hold for a second. We're having...
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Asogwa, could I ask that you put your mic closer to your mouth? We're having problems with translation.
Is this okay? Hello?
Better? One second. If you could just say a few words, please.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me better now? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's great. Thank you. Please do proceed. Apologies for that.
Okay. So yes, I'll just be brief. What we do need is nutrition projects that will take care of the needs of children. Basically, 60% of childhood deaths are due to malnutrition. And when it comes to maternal deaths, 25% of deaths of mothers during pregnancy occurs to hemorrhage. 30 minutes is enough for a woman to die. And therefore, if there are funds available, we should look at the health status of the women currently. Our current health system is decrepit, and we have a huge number of Nigerian medical doctors leaving the country. The economic situation.
Point of order,
again,
Mr.
we're
Chair.
having more problems.
We're having trouble. I am hearing people speaking over the witness in French. Thank you.
Yes, that's right. So there was about 10 seconds remaining. So
there's 10 seconds. It's like the connection we cannot do now.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Just to Madame LaRouche, these are connection problems. It has nothing to do with interpretation.
Mais Monsieur le Président,
but Mr. Chairman, if there are connection problems for the interpreters, we can't carry on. I'm sorry, but that's what the rules are.
So what to do?
You can ask questions to the person in the room.
We'll try to fix the connectivity problem that we're facing.
But you can ask questions to Julia and the other one.
But we will put questions to all the witnesses while we try. So if in the first little while, if we could refrain from asking Dr. Asugwa any questions.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chairman, there was no interpretation at the moment for that.
OK, mais là, on a vraiment un problème.
Well, now we really have a problem. Why can't the interpreters hear what Mr. Asasi said?
Now I'm told everything is working for
the room and the other witnesses.
for Dr. Asogwa as well.
We'll verify.
You hear me now? Hello?
Yep. Okay.
It's not what's coming
It
out.
appears that everything is okay now for Dr. Asogwa, for all the...
No, not for Dr. Asogwa. She doesn't want to interpret for Dr. Asogwa.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, what is the object of, or the reason for having sound tests if this happens midway through the meeting?
Yes.
Sometimes connection.
Yeah, it's a connectivity issue, so it's up and down. So it's beyond the control of anyone here on our end. So, so we're going to continue to experience problems with.
With or not with the other one.
Yes, we are going to continue to have connectivity problems with Dr. Asugwa. So.
I understand you were hearing me properly.
Yes, now we can
hear you. Is that still the
properly.
case?
Is the interpretation? Yeah. So let's hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed that that everything is going to be fine in terms of connectivity. So let's continue on with our questions. You didn't have. You literally had 5 seconds left.
Timing. It's 3 minutes 10. That doesn't even include the interruptions, Chair. I mean,
do you remember when you stopped this? It was 4:50. It was like
Chair, you haven't been stopping my time. It's 3:10. I stopped when there was a point of order raised. I stopped the time and it's 3:10.
No, it was about 10 minutes to. I specifically looked over.
Chair. Importantly, if you're not fair with the time, we can go back. Chair, let me finish now. We can go back and verify who's right. So, and we don't have time to do that now, but it will no doubt happen after the meeting. So I suggest that you give me the remaining 50 seconds that I have to finish my time.
You did this previously as well, Mr. Jenis?
Yeah, Chair.
Just in the previous round. And I am telling you, Mr. Jenis, I looked at this watch. It was 10 to 4. However, to satisfy you, yes, we will go to the next question. If there was a deficit insofar as your question was concerned, we will add it onto your second round.
Well, Chair, I want to finish the round that I have. When there's a point of order, you stop the time.
This is the second time you're just throwing everything into a tizzy, quite frankly, by doing it this way.
Chair, when there is a point of order, you stop the time.
Okay. Madam Clerk, did you have a chance to look at this watch when we suspended the question from Madam Osogo? Remember, we just looked at it. It was here.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I am telling you, you're out of time right now. We will, in the interim, look to make sure, and if you have been shortchanged, we will add it to the second round. That's the best I can do, Mr. Chair.
I'll look forward to the follow-up, Chair.
Thank you. So we now go to Madame Bendayan for 4 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would have a few questions for you, and I apologize for the technical difficulties that we may have had on this end, but I think all is in order now. Your testimony certainly piqued my interest, but prior to that, I also did look up, some of the statements that you have made publicly, and you have stated that abortion should be illegal in all cases. I believe you stated that it is never necessary to save a mother's life, and it should not even be a recourse in the case of rape. Is that a correct description of your position, Dr. Asogwa?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, in Africa, we treasure life. Pregnancy is a blessing. So what we need to do is offer the solution in any crisis situation.
Well,
First of all,
Dr. Asogwa, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I will interrupt. Dr. Asogwa.
Yes.
We too treasure life, and in the case where a woman's life is at risk, do you believe that she should have access to an abortion in order to save her life?
When a woman's life is at risk, medically speaking, it is allowed to take the life of the baby in the womb. That's medically speaking. But how many times is that needed? Very rare occasions.
Both
on points of view, we're talking about.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there are problems once again with the witness. I just wanted to mention that to Ms. Bendayan. The interpretation team can't hear her properly.
With the chair of our committee for 1 second. Monsieur le Président, est-ce que la
Mr. Chairman, is interpretation working?
Can you hear me?
There is connectivity issues. So they're trying their best, the interpreters, but it is on and off, on and off. So.
Dr. Asogwa, I will come back to you in a moment as soon as we can. Perhaps I can ask Ms. Data Ray what your opinion is, or your view, given what you've just heard. Are there cases in which a woman's life is at risk for a variety of reasons, and which an abortion may be necessary in order to protect life, in your opinion?
Absolutely, unequivocally. I think abortion is an important part of healthcare that needs to be accessed, whether it's to save the parent's life, or it's a choice that she would like to access. But absolutely, there's many instances. I've never heard that it is rare. There's many instances to save the mother's life that abortion is the recourse that's needed.
Thank you. And I would like to return to Dr. Asogwa. I will.
Yes. My apologies, just to interject. Dr. Asogwa, can we just ask that you turn off your camera? Sometimes that does help in terms of connectivity. Thank you. Okay. Terribly sorry about that. Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Doctor, we'll try again with a new question. A tweet of yours from about a year ago describes President Biden as a butcher as opposed to President Putin because of President Biden's pro-choice position. I understand that this was in the first week of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Has your position changed since then?
Thank you so much. I would like to please take back what you had said. Abortion due to medical reasons to save the life of a mother is a rare situation. It occurs in about 0.05% of the time.
Point of order, please.
But abortion for social reasons and not to save the life of the mother. And that's my position. And that's the position of most people who care about life. Yes, in that tweet we're mentioning especially what was going on.
There's no translation, Mr. Chairman. There's no interpretation.
I can hear it, but no.
Okay, but you can hear me.
So, Dr. Asogwa, terribly sorry. If we could just ask that you, with respect to this question, you provide us written submissions, that would be very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Perhaps,
our apologies.
Mr. Chair, with the time I have remaining, I could ask a question of the other witnesses.
It is now 5 minutes past, so even factoring in the time that you lost, I think you should be good. Thank you. So we next go to Mr. Bergeron. You have 4 minutes.
Merci,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You probably heard the testimony from Ms. Vasylenko, which was very troubling, concerning what's currently going on in Ukraine, which brings me perhaps to mention a text from a young student in the University of Montreal that was published on the 22nd of February that quoted something from Ms. Pramila Patten, the special representative of the Secretary General of the UN concerning sexual violence in conflict zones. And she said that when women are held for days and raped, when you see a series of genital mutilations, and when Russian soldiers have Viagra, this is clearly a military strategy. And of course, we're talking here about Ukraine, but we could be speaking about many other situations of military conflicts where sexual violence has been used as a military strategy. And we can think about the Tigray region, for example. So are these phenomena that were reported, to your knowledge, Ms. Anderson and Ms. Data Ray? And furthermore, do you have in mind any examples of countries who suggested putting in place justice mechanisms for crimes in wartime?
Latter question, I can't speak to any justice initiatives to address sexual-based violence. Certainly what you are reporting is consistent with what we've heard, and we've made a strong case that the Government of Canada should make the case that as part of the essential package of interventions in humanitarian crises, SRHR is critical and central. It's often thought of as additional, and that's, I mean, women's health in general, right down to obstetric care, but certainly access to contraceptives and abortion is considered extra. And so we've called for, this to be part of the package of essential services that are delivered in any crisis situation.
Madame Dattari, souhaitez...
Ms. Dattari, would you like to add something, or should I move to the next question?
I would just add that, I also don't have additional information about the second part of your question, but in the first, absolutely, rape as a tool of war and terror is quite commonplace, and there's also many instances of that being used as state terror. So not just between conflict between two nations, but also as a way to suppress, opposition within states' own borders.
Dr. Natalia Kanem, who is the Undersecretary of the UN for the UN Population Fund, said to the committee that one of the most profitable methods is to deal with maternal death is to use midwives, and there's currently a shortage of 900,000 midwives worldwide. Do you think that this is also a solution that should be supported by the Canadian government to prevent problems tied to problems in maternity in developing countries in particular?
Frontline healthcare workers, such as midwives, are the solution when it comes to both maternal care, SRHR in general. I think the investment in community healthcare workers, in trained midwives, is the most effective intervention that Canada could support in all its development projects, and especially when it comes to women and children's health, because midwives touch on both the contraceptive care all the way through pregnancy, all the way through childbirth, newborns, and can be major interlocutors with communities and community leaders in order to promote women's health outcomes. So yes, 100%, I agree with Dr. Natalia Kemen.
Madame Dattari.
Ms. Dattari.
Concur 100%.
Minutes. Thank you. So we will now go to Ms. McPherson. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today and sharing this important information with us. One of the things that we have heard time and time again, I'm going to ask both Ms. Anderson and Ms. Dattari. Time and time again, we've heard from witnesses that the suppression of access to reproductive services for women, the lack of access for abortion, does not stop abortion. It simply stops safe abortion. So I'd like you to comment on that so that we do have your testimony in the record. But I also want to talk about Canada and the role we can play in terms of advocates. So Canada should be a leader ensuring that women's rights are protected around the world. I'd like to get your sense. I know that we've done an awful lot on the feminist international assistance policy, and I think that we have done some really good things, but I'd like your perspective on where Canada can be a stronger leader advocating for SRHR around the world, and how we're doing so far. Maybe I'll start with you, Ms. Anderson, if I could.
Thank you. On your first point, at CanWatch, we take an evidence-based approach to our thinking on these issues, and the evidence is unanimous and clear that the restriction of abortion does not stop abortion, and I'm sure my colleague will have the numbers. It only increases unsafe abortion, and it loses women's lives. I think there's just, the data is clear, is very, very clear on that. On your second question, the investments have been made, and Canada has a long trajectory of investing in women and children's health issues, and I was proud to see the $1.4 billion announcement in June of 2019, year over year, for a total of $14 billion. I think where we can do more work is on the diplomacy side, and I think having a cohesive approach, not to standing up on global stages and always just saying things, but being in conversation. I come from Northern Alberta, from a deeply religious community, and I know that these conversations are difficult. They are to be taken with a lot of care, But health is health, and healthcare is healthcare, and that is the stance we should be taking, and that is the way in which we should be working with the communities and the countries that we are in bilateral relationships with, multilateral relationships, et cetera. I also think we can do a lot through multilateral agencies as a leader, pushing and promoting the areas like SRHR within the Global Fund, GFF, et cetera. And I think we can get better at having a more coordinated approach.
Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Desdarais, could you respond as well?
Sure. Absolutely. So the lack of access to abortion doesn't stop abortion, only makes abortion very unsafe and results in dead women, essentially. And that is borne out, instance after instance throughout the globe here as well, and was the big push to decriminalize abortion in Canada. In terms of what Canada could be doing more of, I would say really building with the feminist organizing that is happening on the ground. I think sometimes, as I've seen with witnesses, there's a tension often of feeling like there is kind of a Western approach, or there's a kind of white savior mentality. And the way we get around that is to actually build relationships on the ground with feminists who are there in every instance pushing for their basic human rights and their reproductive justice. So I think it is making sure that when we're saying, taking the leadership of local communities, that we're not turning that to mean that we go to the most conservative anti-choice element in those communities, but we rather find the feminists who are already working in whatever situation we are attempting to support. And it's support, not intervention, usually.
Excellent point. Thank you so much.
Point of order, Mr. Asazi, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of interruption, and I think we have a member who's worried about his time. I think if the chair can make a ruling on it, and if he wants to challenge the ruling, that can be decided later. But to interrupt the members and witnesses here on 15 seconds of supposed lapsed time or time taken away, I think is really rude to the witnesses and other members.
So, point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Jettis.
Thank you, Chair. And any member of the public who wants to consider the fairness of the chair with respect to the time can make the following observations, which is that my time for my question, I was told I had 4 minutes. It started at 12:25. 28 seconds. That member from the bloc initially raised a point of order, started raising a point of order at 12 o'clock, 12:27 and 54 seconds. That was 2 minutes and 26 seconds after I started speaking. It took the chair another 11 seconds following the beginning of the point of order from the bloc member to intervene. There was some intervening time. The chair told the witness to proceed with answering my question at 12:28 and 39 seconds. But 25 seconds later, the bloc member again began raising points of order about concern and concerning regarding time, and that was at 12:29 and 4 seconds. The cumulative time that I was given was 2 minutes and 51 seconds. And the chair is, of course, welcome to dispute this, but any fair-minded person can go do exactly what my team just did, measure the amounts of time I was given. Again, 12:25 and 28 seconds until 12:27 and 54 seconds is 2 minutes and 26 seconds. And then I was given another 25 seconds from 12:29:04 to 12:29:28. That adds up to 2 minutes and 51 seconds. And Chair, when I pointed out that I was timing the time and I had about a minute left, you strongly contradicted me and told me that you had been timing the time. But in fact, you were very clearly incorrect. And respectfully, maybe you need to just consult the technical aspects of your timepiece or something else there. But I hope that you will be fair going forward with respect to the time, and that I will be given the 1 minute and 9 seconds that I should have had as part of the next round.
First of all, allow me to apologize from the three witnesses. This is truly, in my opinion, very unbecoming that we're having all this back and forth regarding time. Mr. Jennis, as you will recall, when you first raised this issue, I said it appeared to me that you had 10 seconds remaining. However, out of an abundance of caution, I did undertake to check and to go back and add whatever you had lost to the time that remained. I did so. I had 2 people actually look at the timing, and the 2 have advised that I may have been off by 10 seconds or by 12 seconds. So quite frankly, I will give you that 20 seconds additional, but I will not do any more than that, Mr. Jennis. You have taken up the time of the committee. You have disrupted the committee. You have disrespected the witnesses. And as I said, I gave you my word.
Chair, you either enforce the rules or
Mr.
you
Jennis,
don't.
I'm sorry, I am not done yet.
Oh.
I gave you my
No, you're
word.
not,
I would
clearly.
look into this. I would remedy it so you wouldn't have been out of time. 2 individuals have kindly and graciously taken out of their time, and they have determined that you were cut off 20 seconds short. So I think, okay, so...
Any member of the public can verify this, Chair.
This is, full well, Mr. Jennis, this is entirely under the discretion of the chair. And I've taken up 2 people.
No, it's not. You can't just arbitrarily cut off people that you have some personal animus against a minute and 10 seconds before their time.
Jennis, again, let me apologize to the witnesses that you have taken up so much time and you have robbed all these witnesses of a whole lot more time.
Give me the opportunity to ask my
That's the
questions,
first
Chair.
opportunity.
Just let me
And
ask
if
my
you haven't-
questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Jennis, you have not been recognized. Allow me to finish what I'm saying. So, again, apologies to the witnesses. We looked into that. If you're not happy with the 20 seconds I'm giving you, you can appeal that, Mr. Jennis. But that is what I'm giving you. So we now go to the second round. So you're being given 20 seconds additional to what you had, Mr. Jennis.
I would like to ask some additional questions, but again, the members of the public can verify the quality of the chair's timing on their own. Ms. Anderson, I wanted to just follow up on the issue of the Muskoka Initiative specifically. I know you're quite familiar with the details of it, so maybe just your reflections on the impact of that. You referred to it as well in your testimony in terms of accountability, mobilization of donors. Would love to hear more from you about the Muskoka Initiative.
Thank you. As someone said, success leaves clues, and I think we should look closely at the success of the Muskoka Initiative for clues as to how we invest and engage in international development. The Muskoka Initiative was committed by the government, Canadian government, $3.5 billion over 5 years. It was a flagship initiative around our official development assistance. It moved the needle significantly by engaging other donor countries in supporting the initiative with a clear and accountable framework for what counted as an investment in Muskoka and what did not count. As well, there was a kind of a diplomatic push and effort in ensuring that these 2 elements of the then Millennium Development Goals that had been largely forgotten in maternal health and newborn health would be engaged in. It was somewhat comprehensive in including nutrition, especially in including researchers in the private sector.
I'm sorry I have to jump in just because the chair hasn't told me how much time I have left. I'm flying blind a bit here. I'm going to give the rest of my time to Mr. Epp.
Mr. Jennis, you are not flying.
I'm going to give the best of my time, rest of my time to Mr. Epp.
You're getting an additional 20
Yeah, but I don't know the total amount of time. I'm giving the anyways.
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, I'm giving the rest of my time to Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A notice was put on motion January the 31st, and I would like to move that as a part of its ongoing study on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the committee study and report to the House on how Canada can support its allies who are affected by resource access challenges stemming from the invasion and steps that the Government of Canada should take to respond to these challenges.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, I would like Mr. Epp to get closer to the mic. They couldn't hear you clearly for the interpretation.
Will you read the motion?
Please.
Yes, that is a part of its ongoing study on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The committee study and report to the House on how Canada can support its allies who are affected by resource access challenges stemming from the invasion and steps that the Government of Canada should take to respond to these challenges. Mr. Chair, if I can add a few comments to that. When people are hungry and when people are cold, it leads to one thing. History has shown us whenever the average caloric intake of a population drops below 1,800, it ends in civil unrest. Going into the war, Ukraine and Russia's food production systems accounted for 30% of the exports of the world's wheat, 17% of the corn, 30% of the barley, and 75% of its sunflower oil. I can spend a few minutes talking about the Grain Sea Initiative as well. Russia is no longer considering that a humanitarian mission. They may look to end the deal after its present extension. Even now, Ukraine and Russia are arguing about the length of the extension, whether it's 120 days or 60 days. As of March 2nd, the Black Sea Grain Initiative had facilitated the export of 22.8 million tons of grain into the global market. Despite the ongoing supply chain interruptions, 64% of that wheat was exported to developing countries, only 64%. Of course, we're all aware of the natural gas interruptions that flowed to Western Europe. The Versailles Declaration of March of 2022, the EU leaders of 27 member states agreed to phase out EU's dependence on Russian fossil fuels as soon as possible. And of course, how many steps are needed to do this? We've got to look at further diversifying our energy sources and our routing. We need to accelerate the deployment of renewables, further employing energy efficiency, improving interconnections of gas, and of course, our electrical energy networks. Fertilizer. We haven't seen the full effects yet of the trade disruptions on the fertilizer market. Russia and Belarus were obviously major suppliers of potash and phosphorus. I mentioned earlier the caloric consumption of a population when it drops below 1,800, it leads to civil unrest. This is going to be a delayed response to what's happening with fertilizer. On my own farm in Leamington, as Canada is a major exporter of potash, we have used more Belarusian and Russian potash on our farm over history. That whole trade route has been disrupted, and that's in a developed country, Mr. Chair. The costs associated with the fertilizer disruptions are affecting farmers around the world in developing countries all over the place. That's going to lead only one place, to lower domestic food production in our developing economies. I'll go back to the main point that I said earlier, was that a caloric drop was below a certain level, and we saw that back in 2007, 2008 with the Arab uprising in response to bread prices.
Mr. Chair. Point of order. I would just like to understand what is going on. Has the motion been officially moved and now we are into debate? Because it certainly seems that Mr. Genuis has complained about not having enough time to question witnesses, and now the time afforded to him to question witnesses on women's reproductive and health rights is being used to move an entirely different motion on an entirely different subject, while we have several witnesses, including here in the room and on screen, waiting to be asked questions on women's reproductive and health rights.
So, as I understand, thank you for that, Madam Bendayan. This was first tabled on January 31st.
January 31st.
So, are you moving?
I moved the motion.
You're
yes,
moving.
I'm just providing some background for priority to it.
Did anyone want to speak to this motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I find it unfortunate that a meeting that was already shortened due to technical difficulties is further shortened by the Conservatives moving this additional motion. I think it would be respectful, although again, sad, to respectfully request the witnesses to leave while we engage in this further discussion. I don't know if other members feel differently, but I certainly wouldn't want to retain these witnesses if they aren't needed for this discussion.
Well, there's several options we have. If there's no debate about this, we can put it to a vote and then perhaps come back and provide some additional time just to afford all of our witnesses the opportunity to respond to questions. So did anyone want to, did they have anything to say about the motion? Yes, Mr.
No, Mr. Epp,
I don't,
had the floor.
I'm not sure Mr. Epp has finished his time. He had it was
sorry, Mr. Epp, my
yes.
apologies.
I also recognize that we're at 1 o'clock. So
that's right.
Some of us have QP responsibilities, et cetera, so I just...
I'll wrap this up fairly quickly, just as far as further, and I guess my point for raising these is to bring some priority into the discussions of scheduling going forward. But basically, the fact Canada has a relationship with two organizations for block funding when it comes to our international development, Canadian Food Grains Bank, which is one I have a particular affinity to, but the World Food Program as well. The World Food Program sources much of their supply and their development work from Ukraine. that work is being affected, besides the cost and the logistics as well. And I can get into further stats at some other point. Yemen is the country that I would just use for
I'm sorry, Mr. Epp, if I could just interject for 1 second. Is it the will of the committee that I thank the witnesses? Yes? Okay, so we will come back to you. I apologize, Mr. Epp. So allow me to thank Madame Dattare, Dr. Asugwa, and Madame Anderson. Thank you very, very much for your time. And I should apologize for all the interjections that you were subjected to. But your perspectives were very important, and they most certainly will be reflected in our study. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you, too.
Yes, Mr. Epp, the floor is yours again. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The number of people facing acute global food insecurity soared from 135 million to 345 million people since 2019. 50 million people right now in 45 countries are approaching famine. That is all directly related to ongoing conflict, and particularly to the war in Ukraine. What may not be known as nearly as well is that China is now the world's largest food importer. And of course, we're seeing the relationship between China and Russia unfold before our eyes, specifically on food production inputs, fertilizer. It's going to lead to further competition for food, and hence further justification for this study. 2020 was the first year that China actually recorded, and this stat I found astounding, more households, 160 million of them, with disposable income over $25,000. That's more than the United States, which only has 120 million such households. So think about that for a moment from the perspective of the 3 A's of food security: the availability, the accessibility, and the affordability. In addition, as China is accomplishing or attempting to feed its population, it is branching out through its Belt and Road initiatives, much work in Africa, and it's actually leading to much of the climate degradation and deforestation around the world. And so, with the 6 points I've cited, I would hope that this committee would consider this motion and would consider its priority in its deliberations going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Oliphant, and then Madam McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And from this side of the table, we are predisposed to supporting this motion. We're going to want to look at where it fits into our already tight calendar for the rest of the year, and we may amend it slightly. So at this time, I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Sure. Yep. On division? No.
Be adopted on division.
Okay. Yes. Can we go to a vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Madame Bentayan?
Oui.
Dr. Fry? Dr. Fry, sorry.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Oliphant?
Oui, yes.
Mr. Sarai?
Yes.
Mr. Zuberi?
Yes.
Mr. Jenis?
No.
Ms. Kramp-Nyman?
No.
Mr. Epp?
No.
Mr. Aubac?
No.
Monsieur Bergeron? Ms. McPherson?
Oui.
Yeas 7, nays 4.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.
The meeting stands adjourned? Yep. Okay, meeting stands adjourned.